I think this is going to be easier than I originally thought it was going to be. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. And with Rover Bowl happening last week, we kind of got stuff messed up around here. We're a little bit out of order. Today should be a day in the life video, but if you take a peek over there, that looks like LR4 truck stuff, which means we're back on the LR4 truck and we are sorting out some of the protection and a little bit of the junk in the trunk. And obviously, bits of it are back off. In addition to that, we take a peek at the lightweight so we can start sorting out some of the cooling situations. Speaking of cooling, it's a hot one today. As you can tell, I soaked through my shirt. But either way, we get some things accomplished and back on track after, taking a little bit of a vacation to drive across the country or partway across the country. So let's get into it. So we flipped the truck around because today we're gonna start working on the backside. So I just wanted to get this to where we can lift the it's not a box, the tray bed, flatbed, off with the hoist. Need to start sorting out the underneath and finish welding the tray out so we can get this guy on the road. Been a minute since we've seen that bear, but we got the toolboxes off and we can lift this guy. But before we do that, I want to measure the location of these 4 mounting holes. This is one of the mounting spots for our steel headache rack roll bar situation. And I just want to see how far off the cab that is. We're about 2.5 inches from the outer ribs of the cab. So the reason why we measured those out is at that mounting plate, if you remember, we are going to make a transfer tube, correct term, but no, another support tube that is going to go from our steel roll bar down to the frame. So today we are going to make some bolt-on plates for the frame for that tube section, so we can bolt it on there and bolt it to there when everything is in place. That way, if we do end up getting wild and rolling this thing over, that weight on top of the roll bar from flipping over or anything is going to transfer straight down to the frame. I guess correct term for the Europeans, chassis. We're going to have some additional tube work to support it on the front to back bend as well, but down to that will be our main structure, so we'll be able to measure off the back of this cab to locate that. But right now we just need to get some junk out of the way. There's a lot going on back here that is no longer beneficial to us, including these swinging, I guess, harmonic weights. I'm guessing these are there to keep some NVH down. They also weigh like 25 pounds. We don't need that. It's gonna be a lightweight race car. I don't think we'll need that. So we're keeping 35s on this guy, obviously. And if we measure where that tire would sit, we're a little shy. We may still get one of the 35s in there, just deflated and squeezed up, but these are also much wider than the factory ones. So if we're gonna do that, I'd like to tuck it up higher. Maximum ground clearance. We got a little bit more room now. We still have a lot of cleaning up to do before we paint the back end here, but plenty of room to stick something else there, whether it's a tire or if you have any suggestions, I'm open just like that. So that'll get us in the vicinity of what we have to clean off. I'll do that here as well. Now I'm not going on accuracy just yet. I just want to know where it's going to land so we can clean the paint off the chassis so it's easy, clean weld. So we're just cleaning the paint off so we can weld these guys on. So those are going to be our mounting plates. We have nuts welded onto the backside and a corresponding plate that'll get bolted onto the top, and that's what the tube will get welded to. And that tube will run from there up to the bottom of the flatbed when everything's in place, and that's going to transfer the load down right to the chassis. But as you see, we can't weld it on just like it is. These little nuts protrude, so we're gonna have to mark everything out, drill some holes, let those sit down into the frame rail. I would have liked to gone wider and had the nuts on the outside, but then we're gonna be dealing with the fuel tank and air compressor in the way, so we would have had to do too much configuring, or I guess reconfiguring. This will work out nice, just a little more work. But this whole thing's been a little more work. We could have just left the back on it if we wanted to do less work. You know, there's not a whole lot more fun things to do than hand drill a bunch of holes into a frame rail. It's like a favorite pastime. Luckily, I'm just using a battery-powered drill and not an old corded one, because I'd probably break my forearm doing this. And we broke it. Nice. While doing thicker steel with these, I'm always undecided what's the best method, whether you do high speed, low torque and just kind of burn the bit up, or low torque and snap the bit when it grabs. Obviously that didn't work the way we wanted it to. Well, either way, one step bit is a casualty, but I can just now sit in there and that plate will sit flush with the nuts recessing into the frame rail. So the plates are welded in. These guys will just sit on top, bolt into place. Put the heat shield back into place. So essentially we'll weld our support tube right down to this plate. This is 1.5 inches. We're gonna do 1 3/4 to match what we got going on up top. But that kind of gives you an idea what we're going for. So that'll transfer the load, or I guess potential load, through the flatbed, not reliant on the aluminum, but instead this steel roll bar right there. Those plates you see right in the center, that is what we're connecting to. So we'll sandwich that aluminum flatbed with 2 1/4-inch pieces of steel and tube going down. Now that's what I call zip disc efficiency right there, but we just sliced down the other side rock slider mount, and that's next up on the LR4. What we're doing is trying to sort out the half finished projects. So we just need to get the other side bent up, but mainly we want to figure out how exactly we're finishing out the mounting on the rock slider. So typically on an LR4, you have another rear door here and a lot more rocker to attach it to. We obviously can't attach it to this because that's just fiberglass. So we're gonna have to come up with some sort of contraption to tie the rear bar into something back here. We're gonna tie the front end of the body mounts on the frame for extra support. That way, when we're bashing off rocks, nothing's gonna move. But back here, we don't have anything, and it's just gonna be kind of hanging out into the open. So we need to address that somehow because that's gonna be a large lever. The end of our mounting to the factory cab is right here, and that is going to be a large lever. Like I said, if we drop hard onto a rock here, that's going to tweak this all to hell and back. So we need to tie in somewhere back here to the frame. Just by looking, I'm thinking this lower control arm mount might be the ticket. The only good thing is down the road, we're going to kind of boat side this, and we're going to have a skid plate that goes from the bottom of this 4x4 angle that we're using to mount the rock slider. That'll go from the rocker and have a skid plate that'll go and mount to the bottom of the frame. I'm pretty much as good as a drill press at this point. So we got the rock slider set back on, and the back here is going to be a little bit of a problem. If we were just doing the passenger side, it wouldn't be a big deal, but this driver's side has an air compressor in the way. I'm kind of thinking we may just hang this off the rear and see what happens, but we're gonna box it in. Well, that was goofy. It's about like 115 degrees here, and the camera just died, but what I'm thinking is if we run another length of tube from here, tie it into this, cut underneath the fiberglass and tie in back here, and then when we plate the top, we'll plate the bottom, and that should box it in enough with it tied to the body mounts on the frame that we should be able to drop onto it pretty hard. But we may just have to test that theory after we get it all made up. We just kind of run out of room without hanging something way low underneath, which I don't necessarily want to do, but if we have to, I guess I can. I mean, we can come underneath the air compressor here near the rear wheel and it won't affect ground clearance a ton, but I'd rather not. But that additional bar there will help protect the cab and give us another place to securely mount the skid plate. I mean, the other option is we got a little room that'll end up free space right there. We can move the air compressor because then we could tie right into the side of the frame rail. So I think if I determine that isn't solid enough on its own, that's what we'll do. We'll relocate the air compressor, which is good anyways because they kind of hang out in the middle of nowhere over there. You can catch them on stuff. I don't know. But either way, what we're gonna do is make the frame mounts. So we'll cut 4 little standoffs like this, and we'll weld essentially what is a washer on the end, and then this will bolt onto the bottom of the body mount. Then we're going to use some 1/4-inch steel and tie that into the bottom of the rock slider. What that'll do is when we drop onto something with the outer part of the rock slider, it's going to want to pull up, but that's going to be tied into the frame itself, and it's not going to allow it to pull. It'll have to tweak some stuff to do it. We'd have to hit pretty hard. So we got our little bottom piece welded on, and now you can kind of see what we got going. The way these are going to work is this would be the bottom of our body mount. Normally we'd have our bolt go right up through, and that would sandwich this section of the frame up into the body. But now we'll have this piece that will go underneath that, and our bolt will go through, and that will hold just like that, and this will be secured into place, and this will tie off to the bottom side of our rock slider. And that's how we're gonna get a nice strong connection point to the frame. So the front mount, we are actually gonna use the little Langmuir press brake to bend these, as that mount sits up a little higher than the one in the rear. Now, as we all know, this thing has been less than reliable. Nothing has changed on that front. Well, let's see if we can get 2 bends done without it messing up. I mean, there is one good thing about this machine. It is consistent with everything else in my life, and that is a mess. And working half the time. Semi-functional, as one might say. But like I've said a million times, when it works, it's freaking awesome. It just doesn't consistently work, which is pretty much the opposite of awesome. You know, some days you just get yourself into some awkward positions. Today's one of those days. We're just gonna line this up and tack it into place while we're laying down on the job. And of course, I didn't turn the welder on. I always seem to do that after I get myself into the most awkward of positions. That looks straight. And the wind comes in. Nice. So roomy. We're probably gonna have to close the garage door here. The wind's whipping through, which blows out the shielding gas around the nozzle, which is no bueno when it comes to welding. But then if we close the door, it's 312 degrees in here. Quit blowing. Really? You know, I figured it'd be nice to actually have the door open for the first time this year, being it's not raining. But no, if it's not raining, it's 70-mile-an-hour gusts. It's probably just my mindset with how everything's gone this past couple months. But holy cow, I've never had the weather bother me as much as it has this year. I don't know how much of the last weld you caught, because my life, it's like I'm in some sort of comedic movie, like, what's that Jim Carrey movie? The Truman Show. That's what I feel like my life is right now. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But hey, at least we're building Land Rovers and having fun while doing it. The camera shut off at some point in time while filming that. But either way, those are tacked in. That way we can weld it all out once we pull this off. We have one more thing to put on there before we do that. And that is this bar, our little support bar. That's gonna go from back here to the end of that tube. So we just need to find our tape measure and get a length on that. So we are gonna go from there to there. We need the back to be like 31 inches should work. And we're gonna cut this end at an angle. Well, and just in case you guys think I'm being dramatic about all that, I probably am. But no, a lot of stuff's been a battle. More so than normal, but we're getting through it. Like battle-wise, to make those bends that we just did, it took about 20 minutes to get this thing to boot up correctly and function. Total turd. And in some good and bad news, just a couple days ago, that building I was trying to purchase, I had a long FaceTime meeting with the owner. It's the first time we've talked person to person, and that is potentially still open. And I say good and bad because it almost would be better if it just was done and I could move on and find something else. But now we're gonna potentially put myself back into limbo and prolong the process, which is fine if it works out and we get that building, but if we don't, it just delays life even further. To be honest, with that whole thing, I just want some finality one way or another. I don't care if it's gonna work out or not. I just wanna know. And like any other cope, I prefer to do them by hand with an angle grinder. So we'll just knock this one out quick. So in just a couple minutes with a flap disc and an angle grinder, we can get ourselves a pretty nice tight fitting joint. The other side is just a tiny bit more work, but not by much. We just have to account for an angle. It's a little less flap disc work, as we're going to cut most of it on the bandsaw, but we just kind of have to do something like that. And if we cut that straight across, it should end up pretty close. Why not? Well, that's it for that today. That's the rubber that the bandsaw rides on, goes around the wheel. That piece there, it's obviously no good. Like I said, everything's going great around here, which is kind of funny. I think I've had that bandsaw for, probably bought it 2010, 2011. So that is 15 years, and I bought it used. It's truly been one of the best tools I've ever bought, so I suppose something can go wrong with it every once in a while. That'll be the first time I've had to replace that too. That's all right, because we can swing the bandsaw at enough of an angle to make that work. I just kind of prefer to freehand them when we can, but this will be fine. And if we slide it in there, we got a pretty decent fit up. We'll touch it a little bit on both ends to dial it in, but mainly I wanted to make sure we have a fair amount of clearance in between it and the fiberglass, because I want to give it a little room to move. Say if it flexes like a 1/4 inch, that's fine. Fiberglass cap isn't going to take well to getting impacted with a steel tube. So we just want to make sure we give ourselves a little room around it. So we'll get that tacked in, and our rock sliders are pretty close to being finished, at least figured out. Love me a little TIG welding. So while we had the driver's side off to finish up a little more of that, we decided to copy it, or I guess mirror it, and we made up the passenger side. This one's all ready to put into place. So we can weld our frame mounts in. So we're just gonna set that up, clamp everything into place, get that all set. I'm pretty happy with how stiff this turned out once we actually bolted it into place. We still don't have all the rocker bolts in, just 2, and then the 2 frame mounts. And that actually may work once we box it. I still think we're gonna have to tie it in with a skid plate to the bottom of the frame rail underneath the air compressor, but we may be able to get away without having to tie the tube into the frame somewhere else. But we'll test that out once we pull it outside after we get the other one on. Now that's pretty proper looking with those on there. That's the first time we get to check it out with the 35s, and we kind of matched up perfectly as to what I was expecting. We'll hop over to the sunnier side, but what I was going for was almost exactly flush with the outside of the tire. I don't know if it's kind of hard to get the angle, but if you look up front there, it is dialed in. That's going to give us a nice thing to skate off the side here. Should protect this fiberglass pretty well, especially when we have the toolbox, the aluminum, and then that steel roll bar. Up front here, we have some tube connectors coming, and we're going to come off the front and make up a new fender wheel well. This stuff will all be getting chopped out of there to have it clearanced out for the much larger tires. I think that came out well, and I actually kind of like this little dual bar deal at the back here protecting the fiberglass. And speaking of protecting the fiberglass, I want to see what happens if we jack up just on the back here. less than ideal. We're gonna have to tie this in somewhere to the frame back there. I was hoping it'd react a little bit better, but it didn't. But them are the brakes. So that's gonna have to wait until we get the toolbox back on there, because we're kind of running out of real estate over here. We got the tire in the way, toolbox will be here, air compressor is in the way, and that's even worse when you put the cover back on it. We'll probably have to sneak something underneath this, I believe. I mean, even if we tied into that bracket on the air compressor, that might stiffen it up enough. We got options. Over here is going to be much easier, but either way, I mean, I guess at least they look kind of cool. They are very functional up until about this point. Then it's flexy. It would protect us from trees and everything. It's just if we drop off a ledge, it's gonna mess some stuff up. So we gotta secure that more, but that's gonna have to wait until we get this guy fully welded out so we can set it back on there without having to pop it on, pop it off a bunch of times. I just want that to be on there for the last time. While we were messing with those sliders, we ran out of argon. So we used the Range Rover truck. To go pick a fresh bottle up. Now, you're not supposed to haul stuff like this enclosed in the back of your Range Rover or your SUV, period. But pretend I didn't. We can use this as the new bottle hauler once it's all ready to go. And it sure is incredibly cleaner back here without all that spare tire junk. And especially that 50 pounds worth of weight hanging off the back really makes that less ugly. Now there's obviously enough strength there to jack it up, and we don't have to worry about that, being we're tied into the rocker and everything. And really, if we box this in top and bottom like we're going to, and a couple other things, I think we could probably get this strong enough to jack up from the rear without a ton of deflection. But it's not just taking the weight off of it that I'm worried about. It's like if we have a sudden drop off a ledge and we shock it with a ton of extra weight and all of the weight of the truck onto it, we don't need to kink the tube or mess anything up to where it's going to pound into the fiberglass cab and just destroy all the work we just did. So we'll fashion something up. But it is nice to see that the rock sliders are nice and sturdy so far in the area where we knew it was going to be, especially since it's not even bolted to the bottom of the rocker yet. We just have 2 bolts into the side of the rocker and 2 into those frame mounts. It's going to have 3 additional bolts into the factory threaded holes along the bottom. So now that that guy's sitting in a good place, in the interest of keeping all the projects rolling, we need to figure out the cooling system on the lightweight. So we're gonna mock some stuff back up, namely just the front end. We're just gonna get the fenders and the radiator surround roughly bolted into place because we need to make some measurements, because we need to add something this one has never had. We got a turbo now, so we need to add an intercooler. This is an early inboard headlight one. They aren't made to have intercoolers in front of them, obviously. So we gotta do some measuring so we make sure we order something that fits. All right, I think this is gonna be easier than I originally thought it was gonna be. We should be able to just use the standard series radiator, which we have sitting back here on the shelf. So this is probably the guy we'll use. We'll get this all cleaned out, checked over. The other option I had was this wider one that was put in when this guy had the Buick V6. And I was kind of concerned that that might be the one that we have to use, but if we did that, it's full width. It's way wider than what they have accounted for on the original series radiator. So it would hang out past over here and here, which isn't a problem unless you have to have charge piping, the turbo piping coming through. So coming out of this, we're gonna have to come shoot through because we're gonna mount the intercooler up here. We're gonna get rid of this fan. I believe we'll get rid of this fan. So it'll come in, we can punch a hole in the side through here. So we'll have in through the intercooler, out. Out, we should just be able to come beneath it and shoot it right into the intake manifold there, which makes me happy because we should be able to squeeze something in here. So we got about 15 inches by, call it 12 So if we shoot end tank here, entrance, exit, come, flow down, out. So if we stay within that 15 by 12 envelope, we should be in good shape without blocking too much of the radiator. And the good thing is the 200 TDIs run much cooler than the gas stuff, especially like a Rover V8. So it's not as temperamental, you want to say, as like the 4.0s, 3.5s, 3.9s, 4.6s. So this should work. We're going to go ahead and order that. We're going to order the exhaust stuff for that because as cool as it sounds, it's getting kind of old listening to that. Then next main video, we're going to be welding a ton of the aluminum flatbed out, along with kind of messing with those tube fender concept, because those connectors should be here tomorrow, and we'll be able to play around with that and kind of see if we can get the rubars, or can't remember what everyone said they were. I think the rhubarb might be up front. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the comments. I'm kind of upset at myself because I thought some of the names were pretty cool when you talk about Australian terms. But either way, the new wheel wells will be shaped with that tube and tied into the rock slider, which is going to fortify that even more and into what is eventually going to be a semi-tube front bumper. So with that being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and we will catch you on the next one because I'm gonna go home and take a shower. I've lost about 15 gallons of water via sweat today, but it was a good day. And in some other good news, I was able to get 2 of these guys for $7.99. They will also be here tomorrow. It's hard to beat having a tool that you bought secondhand that has needed nothing for 15 years. It is amazing what this thing has built in the last 15, 16 years, and we haven't had to touch it up until today. No complaints here.